Thank you. Thanks, Victor. Good morning and good noon to the people who are on the East Coast or the Central Timeline. My name is Amit Ruhela, and I am a research associate at Texas Advanced Supercomputing Center. In the morning session, Victor has told you about a lot of 3.0, MPA 3.0 standard concepts, and now I will touch upon another important feature of MPA 3.0 standard, which is tools interface. All the slides are available at this link, bit.ly/tag minus SEA. So here I have also uploaded the exercises which I will be covering in this session. So MPA tool support regarding this, as we know in HPC applications, as the name suggests, high performance computing applications, performance is the major concern, and a variety of applications which which are based on distributed programming, their performance depend on not only the hardware, the software libraries, as well as the tuning parameters supported by those communication libraries. And it's very essential to understand from the perspective of a developer as well as a user, where exactly your application is spending the time, whether it's the computations or the communications. Though communication is a necessary evil for the HPC applications, but without communication, you cannot run the applications on multiple nodes. So it is essential to understand where exactly the time is spent and whether it's a communication library which is responsible for giving you a poor performance of the applications. So MPI 3. So MPI standard provides a couple of interfaces to profile your applications. And in this presentation, I'll be covering three different aspects of tools interface. The first one is called PMPI. It's there right from the inception of MPI 1.0 standard. And it has been quite popular for several decades. Whereas MPI standard has also provided MPI-T, which is the MPI-T tools interface. It has been added in 3.0 standard in somewhere in September 2012, and it provides you two kinds of interface. One is the CVAR, which is basically control variables, and second is the PVARs, what is called performance variable. So any profiling library, they wants to understand what all the performance parameters supported by any MPI implementation supports two types of interfaces, like performance variable, which defines what all variables are there within the MPI library. And then there are CVARs, which is basically control variables, like you can change their values to change the behavior of MPI implementations. In the forthcoming standard, which is MPI 4.0, the MPI committee has introduced the concept of events, which are basically which basically gives you a final granularity of performance parameters, and you can also tune the MPI library at those events. Let's start with the first traditional interface, which is PMPI. It has been there since the inception of MPI library. It was defined by MPI standard 1.0 in 1994. The beauty of this interface is that it doesn't require any knowledge of implementation of MPI libraries. So it's a black box approach, which basically collects a quite lot of information, not detailed one, but a lot of information can be generated from this PMPI interface. It's easy to implement and has been used by a variety of performance analysis and optimization tools, debuggers, and correctness checker tools. Some of you might have been known about MPIP. Then Tau is another interface which uses this PMPI. Another tool, it's developed by University of Oregon, and then Empire. So there are a couple of tools which are based on PMPI, and I will show you what kind of information could be collected by these kind of tools. Basically, the PMPI interface intercept all the PMPI calls, except some of the functions which are defined by the macros. And you can control the profiling using MPI underscore p control function. So if MPI p control is 1, it means the profiling can be done. And whereas if you want to disable it, you can set it to 0. So sometimes, like the developers, they don't want to profile the time spent in MPI initialization, but they want to understand the time spent in some particular part of the code. So to profile that particular part of the block of the code, they can just set MPI p control equals to 1 just before that, and they can turn it off after that part of the code. So what all information is collected, it's all based on the tools or the users. And there is no strict standard like this information can be collected and this cannot be. So it all depends on the profiling tool. How does it work? Let's take a look. Usually there is an application or a profiling tool which basically call MPI send or any function which is defined by the MPI standard. Now these calls basically calls the MPA implementations, and within MPA implementations, these functions like MPA standard, they have been defined by a name shift interface. They instead of MPA send, the MPA libraries define them as a PMPI underscore send. So it's a name shifted interface. Whereas the actual function, the MPSN, is defined as a weak symbol which points to the name shifted interface. So weak symbols are basically a mechanism to provide the default implementation of the functions. These weak functions can be replaced by a stronger functions at the link time. So how the tools work? So the profiling libraries, they define this weak, they define a stronger symbol, a stronger definition of MPSN. And when the library is when the program is compiled with a profiling library, instead of this weak function to be called, this is overridden by a profiling library MPSN function. And now this MPA send function, what it does, it itself calls the PMPA send function from the PMPA implementation. But before and after that, it starts the profiling, and after that, it stops the profiling. So this way, the profiling libraries are able to capture the time spent in a given MPA function. So let's try to understand all these with the help of an exercise. I would go through some of the programs which I have written, and these programs you can refer it using the bit.ly link which I have provided. So I'll go through these programs and show you how you can use the PMPA interface for getting profiling information from the programs. So the first program, which is test underscore point to point send.c, it's basically a very simple program which does send and receive for a given number of iterations. So this is the program. Is it readable? I believe it should be, but I will try to increase the font size. So in this program, what it does is for the iteration number of times specified by the user, there are two ranks. One rank sends calls the MPI send function, and another one calls the MPI receive function. So this is the user application. Now let's take a look at profiler. And what profiler does is it defines the MPI send as a stronger symbol. There is no hash pragma weak defined here. So if hash pragma weak is written just before the integer, what it means, it is a weak function. But instead of defining it as a weak function, it provides a stronger definition which will replace the MPI send function defined by the MPI library. So in this MPI send function, before calling the PMPI send name shift interface of MPI send, it starts a timer, and as the send completes, it records the time taken by the MPI send. Along with the time, it also captures the size, basically how much amount of byte is being transferred by this MPI send function. But if the profile, and as I told you, there is a function called MPI control. So if this MPI control is one, what it does is it captures it starts the profiling, and we can turn it on and off uh, to get to profile the time and volume or amount of bytes sent by this message function, by this MPI send function. So if profile level is one, which is defined by MPI control, we profile it. Otherwise, we'll just call the PMPI send function. And at the end, we can print out the statistics, which is basically how many iterations were called, how much volume of the data was transmitted, and then what was the total time taken by all the MPI sends. And we can also print out the average bytes and average time recorded. So this is the way how profiling function can be written. So it all depends on tool developer or a user, what information they wants to capture. As you can see, the PMPA send function receives the argument of like buffer, count, data type, destination, tag, and communicator. So any profiling tool can also capture what was the data type used in this particular communication, who are the source and who are the destinations, and what was the tag value used. And apart from that, they can also record the communicator information. Not very frequently, but sometimes you can also change the values of the buffer to trigger the corner cases of your testing. So this is the way how profiler can be written out. As I said, there is a tool called MPIP, which is based on this PMPI interface. And I just want to show you a report, what kind of information it collects. In this example, I just use the OSU Bcast, which is a Bcast micro benchmark. And this records when that start and stop time of that particular benchmark. And it also shows you the program was run on 16 ranks, and it will show you the time taken by each rank. Application time is the total time taken by by a rank to run that broadcast micro benchmark. Then MPA time is how much time was actually spent in the communication part. So as you can see, the communication is dominating here. So 95% of the entire application time was spent in the MPI communication. You can also get the information about what all the communication collectives have been used. For example, reduce, barrier, bcast, and reduce functions. Though it is a OSU bcast benchmark, but the library, the MP implementation, also uses the reduce and barrier collectives in the MP initialization and MP finalize phase. So apart from this, you can also record like what was the time taken, the covariance, and then you can also get the profiling stats of message size and detailed profiling number or detailed numbers about like how much time was spent in barrier at what particular rank, and a lot of other information. So this is the way how we can collect the information from PMPI interface. So in my exercise, like if you go to uh, the exercise which I uploaded onto the portal, it has a variety of folders. For example, the first folder is PMPI, which is used to profile the PMPI information, then PVARs, CVARs, and category. So in PMPI, I can just run it and I will show you how to compile such library. So the profiling library is compiled with just MPI-CC function, MPI-CC call, and then we'll make a library out of it and link it with the application at the linking time. So this way we can just link it, and then to run it, I'll just call run.sh, which basically calls the profiling library. In the first call, we just set PMPI control equals to 0. It means like we don't want to profile it. And then we ran the MP exec program. And in the second, we would like to profile it and see what was the time taken. So we'll call for 100 iterations, and we found that total bytes were 400, which is like 4 bytes per iteration. Basically, an integer was sent, and then what was the time taken and average byte size and average time. So this is the interface, PMPI interface. As you can see, the PMPI interface is based on the weak symbols, and at a time only one strong definition of a weak symbol can exist. What it means, only one profiling library can intercept a running MPI application. With this interface, you will only get the shallow profiling. You don't get the internal details of the MPI implementation. Though you can get all the details about the MPI functions defined by a library, but how the library is actually implementing those in its implementation, you cannot get those informations. There is no in-depth details of MPI implementations are exposed, and external view of MPI operations sometimes is not sufficient for the users or developers to understand the performance bottlenecks. Each MPI library supports hundreds of parameters, the environment variables, and the effect of those environment variables is not being captured by the PMPI profiling interface. So it's an interface which is like the first level of profiling. If you want to find out how much communication was spent, how much time was spent in communication, so this PMPI interface can be used very well. In MPI 3.0 standard, which was published in September 2012, so MPI committee has brought the tools interface to provide the functionalities not captured by PMPI. It's an interface which gives you a comprehensive performance data in a very reliable and portable manner. It allows you to monitor the performance, look at the performance of MPI implementation through the PVARs, and then the tools or the user can auto tune and they can change the behavior of default implementation of the MPI libraries dynamically. It's a part of 3.0 standard, and it provides or expose out various internal states and configuration of MPI libraries. There is, as just like PMPI, there is no restrictions on the implementation. For example, Intel MPI, MWP2, or OpenMPI, they have their own implementations. No one is constrained to define certain variables or name them in a certain manner. So basically, there are two interfaces defined by this. One is the control, and second is the performance variable. Let's take a look at general workflow of profiling library. So any user application or a tool which wants to use this MPIT tools interface, they have to initialize the profiling information through the MPIT init thread function. So MPI init thread and the profiling finishes with the MPIT finalize functions. So every profiling information, every profiling calls has to be within this MPIT init thread and MPI finalize function. So once you initialize the profiling interface, you have to, or the user or the tools has to capture the capabilities defined by a MPI library. As I said, any MPI library, whether it's an Intel MPI or MWP2, their capabilities are different because they are not bound to follow some standard. They just define the interfaces, and MPI standard just define the interfaces, and MPI implementers, they expose the capabilities based on their own designs or their own like what information they want to expose it to the users. So these capabilities can be known with the help of getNum function. What it says is it will gives you how many PVARs and how many CVARs are supported. Once you know n number of PVARs or n number of CVARs are supported, then you can index or iterate over to those number of PVARs and CVARs to get the meaning of each variables. Once you get the information, or you can also get the information about a particular PVAR or CVAR if you know them by their name. And once you get the information, then you can access any PVAR or CVAR with the help of supporting functions, which I'm going to explain in next set of slides. Uh, let's take a look at the syntax of these functions. So MPA init thread require two arguments. One is the required and second is the provided. So required says that what kind of thread support do you require? So it can be funnel support, it can be multiple or single or serialized. What it means is if you have a threads, how the threads are going to call the MPA functions, whether a single thread is calling the MPA function or anyone can call the MPA functions. And if anyone can call, what is the mode of their access, whether they are serialized or they can call independently. And the provided argument gives you what kind of interface, what kind of thread support the MPA library provides to you. Then we have a finalize function which doesn't require any argument. Then as I said, get num, it could be MPIT CVAR get num or MPIT PVAR get num function, which will basically gives you the number of supported PVARs and CVARs by MPI library. Once you know the number, you can iterate over those numbers to get their information. For example, this get info function, which is I have explained it in the next slide. So this get info function takes the index as an argument, and it will give you the name of that PVAR. For example, in the example shown here from the Intel MPI. So at the index of 184, uh, it defines a PVAR name. It defines a CVAR name MPIR CVAR CH4 OFI enable AM, and this has a name. Then you also get the name length, which is the length of this name. Then you'll also get the verbosity. So verbosity is one thing which is basically tells who are the intended audience of this configure CVAR or PVAR, whether it has a meaning for a common user or a developer or a MPA tuner. So it has a different levels like basic, detail, and all. But verbosity is basically whether it has a meaning or whether it has any sense for a user or developer or a tuner. This is a way of categorizing, and then we have a data type of that PVAR or CVAR, whether it's an integer, long, double, or whatever. And if the data type is integer, so some of the MPI implementations may give the name of each integer type, integer value. For example, if it is 0 or 1, it can say it is enable or disable. So you can also define the enumeration types. The MPI implementation define the enumeration types, and tools can access it to show, to give it a meaningful, to understand the meaningful name of that value. Then a description is associated with these PVARs and CVAR. For example, this example shows if true, enable OFI active message support. Then it is also has a binding parameter, so which basically give where exactly this variable is bind to, whether the variable is defined at a global level, which is basically no object. Then it can also be communicator level, whether the PVAR or CVAR is bind to a communicator. It can also bind to data type, error handlers, file, group of processes, reduction operators, MPI request, one-sided operations, message object, info object, or session objects. So these are the bindings defined by MPI standard, and any PVAR or CVAR can bind to one of these. Then apart from the binding, we also get the information regarding the scope of the variable, which basically tell when the variable scope of when changes to this variable are possible. For example, the scope of variable could be a constant, like it will not change its value. It will remain the same throughout a application run. It can also be a read only, which means the parameter can change by the MP implementation, but the tools or the users can only read it. They cannot change its value. It can be a local to a process. When we say the scope of a control variable is local, it means it is only for a single process the value can be changed. When we say a group, it means the variable is relevant to a group of processes. But if we say group equals, it means every process within that group will get the same value of that variable. Similarly, all is there, which is basically for all the processes within a application, and all equal says the value will be same for all the processes within that application. Apart from these, the p-vars define three additional parameters. One is the read only, which says the parameter can only be read, it cannot be reset. Then we have a continuous. So p-vars are basically the states of information or the utilization of resources or some kind of thresholds, and these values can either be continuous in nature, which is basically they keeps on changing, and they will define the current state. Like when you access them, they will give you the current status of that p-var. But it can also be when the continuous is set to 0, it means you can start and stop as well. So what it allows you is suppose you want to capture some threshold, so you can just keep it stop before the profiling, and when you want to profile, you can start it and then you can stop it again to get the value in that particular duration. So, and the last parameter is atomic, which means you can read and reset it atomically or not. So these are the informations which you will get when you call the get info function. Now let's start with the CVAR functions, CVAR variables. As I said, CVARs are basically the knobs which are used to tune the performance of MPA implementations. Most of the MPA applications, they define the CVARs in terms of the environment variables. So using environment variables like the binding policies or something like the eager threshold and all, eager buffer size. So these are all the things which you can define in an environment variables. But for the tools to or for the applications to tune or change the implementation of MPA libraries, control variables are available. So all the control variables you can retrieve and set them for tuning the MPA implementations, and usually these are the environment variables. And some of the examples are given here, like eager threshold, virtual buffer sizes, process pinning configurations, etc. Then to access any CVAR, you first have to get a handle for that particular object. And then once you get a handle of that particular object, which belongs to a CVAR, you can read and write with the help of two functions like MPI CVAR read and MPI CVAR write. And at the end, you can also free the handle when it is not required. So these are the syntax of the functions. So to get the handle, you will define what is the index of that CVAR. Then you will define which object you want to profile. And then it will give you a handle and a count of which represents the number of items that are represented by that CVAR. Reading a CVAR is quite simple. Like you just give the handle and give the buffer where exactly you want to get the information about. So when you say when you give read, the MPA implementation will copy the value to the buffer pointed by your CVAR MPA CVAR read call. Writing a function is similar, but it's in opposite direction. So you give a buffer, and that buffer is being copied to the MPA implementations. So let's take an example of, let's go through some of the exercises. And the goal of these exercises is first to list down all the CVAR supported by MPA implementation. And then we'll take a look at, we'll try to change the default behavior of MPA implementations. So these are the two exercises. I'm going to show it to you. So the first is list all cvars.c. In this function, it starts with a MPA init thread, which basically initialize the tools in information interface. And we say that we just want MPA single thread single. Basically, one thread is calling the MPA functions. Once you initialize the profiling interface, then you will call getNum functions to get how many CVARs are supported by a particular implementation. And once you get this number, you can iterate over to that number and find out, and you can call mpit cvar get info function, and this function will give you various details which can be printed out on a screen. For example, let me go through this cvar. So let's compile it and learn list all cvar. So as you can see, this is basically Intel MPI, and it supports almost like 619 CVARs, and these CVARs are listed as index, their name, then their definition, and whether they bind to an object or whether they bind to and their verbosity level, and what is the scope. So Intel MPI supports 619, and if we take a look at MVAPISH2, they have almost like 106 PVAR supported by them. Now let's try to change the default behavior of MPA implementation using a CVAR. So as Victor has told you, or about some of the collective operations, one of the collective operation is MPI bcast, and each MPI library, for example, I think MVAPISH2, they have almost like 18 to 20 different implementations of bcast. And these bcast implementations depend on the message size, how many processes are there, and what is the how many processes are there, how many message size, and there are several other factors like the capability supported by the hardware. So this CVAR, the Intel MPI, they have a default implementation, but we just want to change it within a program. So as you can see, we will start with the init thread to use this MPI tool information, and this CVAR. So the first thing is we just want to know what is the index of this CVAR within the MPI implementation. So get CVAR function is defined by me, and if we take a look at get CVAR function, what it does, it will first get the index MPI using MPIT CVAR get index function, and it will also print out whether what's the name, verbosity, data type, description, and binding information. This CVAR is doesn't bind to any object, the logical object. It is defined at a global level, so the scope will be scope output by this function will be at a global level. Now, as you can see, once we okay, so once we get the information about the CVAR, we will change its default value, and we'll change it to the value equals to 4, which is topology aware binomial bcast. You can also see that this information can be changed even before the MPI init. So what it means, this profiling interface is workable even before the application MPI implementation initializes itself. So even before that, we change its value, and with this MPI init, if it calls any bcast function, it will make use of the binomial topology aware binomial bcast. Once it initialized, we'll call MPI bcast function, and we'll get the time and we'll record the time taken by that MPI bcast using topology aware binomial bcast implementation. After that, we'll again change its value to value equals to 9, which is basically topology aware Schwamm based bcast algorithm, and we'll again note down the time spent in this bcast communication. So within the implementation, like how the how the CVAR was actually set, you'll just get the index, you'll allocate a handle to it, and then you'll read its value, and then you'll write the value and verify again like what the value was set. You don't need to call the read functions here. You can also just set the CVAR right and change the value of that algorithm. So here I'm just going to run this program. Configure CVAR. So as you can see, this MPI CVAR bcast, I just printed out first the information about this. Its scope is equal for all, like all the processes should have the same value, and it doesn't bind to any object. And when we have set the functions to a value of 4, like if we want to make use of this particular algorithm, the time taken was 38 microseconds. Whereas when we change the value to 9, which is basically topology with Schwamm bcast algorithm, the performance changed to 0.05. So there is a huge difference between two implementations of a bcast algorithm. And this is the way how you can identify, like I mean, you can always change the algorithm which is defined for a particular message size or for a particular scenario. And if you know, like if when the communication is a huge within an application run, then you can try out different like first you have to know what all collective algorithms have been used, and then you can also change their value. You can hit and try with different implementations, and you can find out which algorithms give the best performance for your algorithm, for your application. Though all the MPI implementations, whether Intel MPI, OpenMPI, or MVPISH2, they have a default implementation, or they try to tune it on your clusters, as we did a few years back with Alexandro. So we try to tune the MVPISH2 over the Shine cluster, and it's always there that there is a scope, like because of some hardware changes, some algorithms may not work at that level. So you can always try and you can always change these algorithms to get a better performance. uh, After this, let's go back to the slides. Now the next interface is the performance variables, and this performance variable basically gives you the internal information about the MP implementations. So there are several states, like whether MP is waiting, blocked, receiving, or not active. Then there are some queue sizes and length. These are the informations which you can extract from the performance variable. An example is given here. So PVAs are bind to certain classes, like each class represents the semantics, like what information does it represent, what data type it can take. For example, state always take a integer data type, whereas percentage utilization always take a double data type. So it also gives you the behavior, what could be the initial values, whether those classes can overflow. So if the classes overflow, it means the tool or the user have to make sure when the overflow has have to make sure if the overflow happens, they should not get a negative values from final to initial. They have to take care of that. And this also gives you when and how values can be changed by MPA implementations. So state is there, like which can take enumerated values. Level denotes you what is the resource utilization of a particular PVAR. It represents the resource utilization in terms of abstract values. Then it can also gives you the size of a resource. Percentage utilization is similar to level, but it in terms of the percentage, like 0 to 1. High watermark is if a variable is defined as a high watermark, then it means like it will always capture the highest value attained by that PVAR from the last reset or from the initial start of the application. Similarly, low watermark captures the lowest value achieved. Counter is basically counting how many events have occurred. Aggregate gives you the number, also gives you the number of occurrences, but it gives you the aggregate values of those occurrences. as an example, counter can give you number of memory operations called, but whereas the aggregate can give you how much memory was consumed in those number of calls. Then we can have a timer which captures the time taken by a piece of code. And if nothing falls if a PVAR doesn't falls in any of this category, it can be defined as a generic. So then the workflow of PVAR is like PVARs are called in terms of sessions, and sessions allows you to avoid the conflicts while accessing the PVARs by different tools. So each PVAR is called in a session, and within session the user or the tools can allocate a handle to the PVAR. Then if the PVAR is not continuous, you can start and stop. And you can also access the PVAR using the functions like PVAR read, write, reset, and read and reset. So the syntax is given here. Since I don't have much time, I'm just skipping the syntax. But if you want to take a look at the PVARs, I'll just go through a few exercises. So first of all, we would like to know what all PVAR supported by the implementation. Intel MPI doesn't support any PVAR, it's just 2 PVARs. Then if we take a look at MWebIsh2, okay. So the number of PVARs equal to 0. I think there is some issue, but I think MWebIsh2, let me run stored as such. So Intel MPI just defined 2 PVARs, whereas why I saw the number of PVARs equals to 0, because the default MPI which is installed on Frontera, that doesn't have a MPIT tool information available. Enabled. So therefore, I have installed another version of MWebIsh2 in my system, which basically says that MWebIsh2 support almost like 557 PVARs. So this is one thing. I can show you some of the PVARs like which I have captured here. So these are the PVARs like MV2 call iscatter count send, which is basically defines count of messages sent by iscatter algorithms. And you can also I have also another program which shows you read pvar.c. What it does is basically there is a function, there is a pvar like MV2 calls pcast mem0 copy, and it captures it initializes the thread, then creates a session and creates a handle to it, and after that it starts the pvar. So now you are going to count how many times this particular algorithm MV2 call pcast mem0 copy was called. So you call 8 number of times, and then you stop the pvar, and at the final you'll read the value of that pvar. So this function, let me run it, /read pvar, run pvar read pvar.ch. So this particular function calls the bcast algorithm 8 number of times, and we'll read the value of this variable at the end, and it says that it has been called 8 number of times. So this is the way how you can capture out the pvar information. And then we have then MPI libraries also support the variable categorization. It's just a way to define the logical relationship between different variables. As we know, there are 500s of parameters supported by MWebIsh2. So how these parameters are related to each other, the variables are related to each other. There are almost like 11 categories. So this gives you basically gives you a way of categorization these variables and to display it in a nice manner at the tools interface. We'll not go into this exercise, but in the end, I just want to highlight the forthcoming standard, which basically includes the events. So PVARs are basically a way to capture the aggregate information of a particular variable. Like you can get the aggregate statistics of some PVARs defined by NPM implementations. But to capture when exactly that variable was changed, And if you want to tune the library at that moment, you need to make use of the events interface. So event interface, what happens is it's a way to determine the specific state change within the MPA implementation on per instance basis. So if any process changes its value, it can trigger an event, and the tools interface, they can capture that event and make a certain tuning of that MPA implementation. So for this, there are a variety of functions supported. For example, events general, like you can know with these functions, like you can find out how many events are supported, what are the indexes, and what are the meaning of those events. Then we can have we can also get who are the sources of those events, who are calling those events, whether it's a hardware or a software entities or some other piece of code. Then we can also get a handle to those events. So any tool has to first get the handle to that event and set some hints so that the MP implementation we can make use of those hints. Then each tool will register a callback function, which is basically called when the event happens. So MPA implementation will call the callback function, which is registered by the tools. Once the event happens or your callback function is called, then the tools can query about the events using a read an event, using read functions, copy event functions, and they can also get their timestamps and event who are the sources of those events. For some reasons, if events are not being, if the callbacks are not being called, they are basically the dropped events, and the tools can query those dropped events using some functions defined here. So this is all about the events. I don't have any exercises for it, but this is still in development, and the MPA standard 4.0 has not come yet. But this will be a part of the MPA 4.0 standard in a few months. Uh, to summarize, I have gone through a traditional PMPI interface supported by the de facto and by the MPA standard from its inception. We also covered like the MPT tools interface, which gives you a very detailed information by which user or user or developer or tools interface can capture a very nice set of information from the MPI implementations. There are a variety of tools like which exploit these features, like profilers, syntax checkers, and performance analysis tools. And new features make profiling even more robust and portable. The only issue is that there is no standard naming conventions for the MPIT variables, which makes it very hard for the uh, tools developer to have a common interface across the different MPI implementations. I believe even with that, this is a very nice set of interface, and definitely people can use it to profile their applications. I'll stop here. If there is any question, I will take. And thanks for listening, me and Victor. And we are very grateful for this tutorial.